Back in the day,
What was forbidden in old Finland?
the North was a different place.
Dancing is a crime. In old Finland, dancing was not always seen as harmless entertainment. During the difficult years of the Second World War and the period that followed, public dance events were heavily restricted. Authorities believed that large gatherings could weaken wartime discipline and create moral concerns among young people. Dance halls, which had once been places for music, romance, and social life, became places of suspicion. Young Finns who wanted to escape the pressure of war sometimes organised secret dance gatherings in private homes and hidden locations. For many young people, dancing was more than just fun. It was a symbol of freedom, happiness, and normal life. But during these years, even a simple dance could become an act of rebellion against strict social rules. The sound of music continued behind closed doors, showing how ordinary people tried to protect small moments of joy during one of Finland's hardest periods.
Reading books is prohibited.
After the Second World War, Finland entered a complicated political era. The country shared a long border with the Soviet Union, and maintaining peaceful relations became extremely important. Because of this sensitive situation, some books and political publications were restricted. Materials considered strongly anti-Soviet or dangerous to foreign relations could face limitations in distribution. This period became known as a time when Finland had to carefully balance independence and diplomacy. Writers, publishers, and journalists often had to think carefully about how certain topics were presented. For ordinary Finns, this meant that some ideas and stories were harder to access. A book was no longer just a book. Sometimes it was viewed as a political message that could affect international relationships.
Driving a car is practically illegal.
Imagine owning a car, but not being allowed to freely drive it. During the war years in Finland, this became reality for many people. Fuel shortages made gasoline extremely valuable. The government introduced strict controls on private vehicle use, and many car owners needed special permission to drive. Cars were often reserved for essential purposes, such as military transportation, emergency services, and important work. Some people had vehicles sitting unused for long periods because there was simply not enough fuel available. In a country facing war and economic pressure, a car was no longer just a symbol of freedom. It became a controlled resource.
Youth night gatherings attract close attention.
In early 20th century Finland, especially in rural communities, young people's nighttime activities often attracted attention. Local authorities and religious communities sometimes viewed late-night gatherings, dances, and social events with suspicion. They worried about morality, alcohol use, and changing traditions as Finland moved from an old rural society toward a more modern way of life. In some places, events were restricted or discouraged, especially when they continued late into the night. For young Finns, these gatherings were important moments to meet friends, find love, and experience freedom, but older generations often saw them as a challenge to traditional values.
Beer sales were restricted for decades.
For many years, buying strong beer in Finland was not as simple as walking into a supermarket. Until 1969, stronger beer was not freely available in ordinary grocery stores. People who wanted higher strength alcoholic drinks had to visit government-controlled alcohol shops. Finland had strict alcohol regulations because authorities wanted to reduce alcohol-related social problems. This created a unique drinking culture where alcohol sales were carefully controlled by the state. The end of these restrictions marked a major change in Finnish everyday life, showing how attitudes toward alcohol slowly transformed over time.
Owning a radio could require official permission.
Before television became common, radio was the window to the outside world. But in old Finland, owning a radio was not always completely free. During the 1920s and 1930s, radio owners were often required to register their devices and pay a license fee. The government used these systems to control broadcasting and support the development of national radio networks. Using a radio without proper registration could lead to penalties. For many Finnish families, a radio was a precious object. It brought music, news, and stories into homes. But it was also connected to rules and regulations that shaped everyday life.
Food rationing, when everyday products became precious. In 1940s Finland, everyday foods that people once bought freely became carefully controlled. Products like meat, sugar, coffee, and butter were distributed through a ration system. Citizens received ration cards that determined how much they were allowed to purchase. Buying more than your permitted amount was forbidden. Shops carefully monitored supplies because every kilogram of food mattered. Coffee became especially important in Finnish culture, and shortages forced many people to create substitutes using other ingredients. These restrictions changed daily life. Families learned to save, share, and make the most of limited resources during a time when even a small amount of food could make a difference.
When Finland forced left-handed children to change hands. Imagine being told that the hand you naturally use is wrong. For much of the 20th century in Finland, many left-handed children were forced to write with their right hand at school. Teachers often believed that using the left hand was a bad habit that needed to be corrected. Children who naturally preferred their left hand were sometimes required to switch hands during writing lessons. Some students struggled to adapt, while others found the process stressful and frustrating. At the time, many educators across Europe believed that right-handedness was more proper, more disciplined, and better suited for learning. Left-handedness was often misunderstood and viewed as something unusual that should be changed. For some children, the pressure to write with their right hand led to difficulties in school. They had to relearn basic skills that should have come naturally. What should have been a simple classroom activity became a daily challenge. Today, this idea seems almost unbelievable. Modern science recognizes that left-handedness is a completely normal variation of human development. Finnish schools now encourage children to use whichever hand feels natural to them. Looking back, the practice of forcing left-handed children to switch hands remains one of the strangest and most surprising aspects of old Finnish education. It serves as a reminder that ideas once considered normal can later seem outdated, unfair, and difficult to understand.
Don't forget to follow our channel for interesting facts and nostalgia from ancient Scandinavia.
The North was a different place.